Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on strategic planning for campus suicide prevention. We'll get started in about 5 minutes, but I also wanted to invite you as you're waiting um, to answer the poll that's on the top of your screen. We just want to get a sense of what type of campus you are located at. So if you could just mark urban, rural, suburban, or other. And if you do choose other, you can chat in what other type of campus you're located at. In addition to the poll, we have a question underneath the poll about what are your favorite things about working on a college campus? And we'd love to hear from you regarding that. So again, we'll get started in about 4 minutes. And thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar on strategic planning for campus suicide prevention. We'll get started at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, but we would like you to answer the poll on the top of your screen in terms of what type of campus you're located, and if you would like to chat in your favorite things about working on a college campus on the bottom of your screen. Thanks so much, and again, we'll get started at Eastern Time. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on strategic planning for campus suicide prevention. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes. And as you can see, people are answering the poll at the top of their screen on what type of campus they're located at. And also, if you could chat in your favorite things about working on a college campus. And again, we'll get started in just a few minutes. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on strategic planning for campus suicide prevention. As you can see, people are answering the poll. It looks like, in terms of campuses, that we have the majority of you are calling in from urban campuses, and we've got a few rural and suburban campuses, in addition to one other campus. And looks like a lot of you really enjoy the energy of working on a college campus, the diversity of students, and also I saw another one that I also enjoyed in terms of all the beautiful walkways when you need to decompress. So thank you all for answering our questions. And so David, if you could switch to the next layout, please. And again, we'd like to welcome you to today's webinar on strategic planning for campus suicide prevention. This webinar is a part of the campus training program. We are recording this webinar. The recording has started, and it will be posted on SPRC's website along with the presentation. So if you would like any of your other staff members to listen in, they can do so by going to the website, and we'll be sending out that link later on. So again, welcome to today's webinar on strategic planning for campus suicide prevention. This webinar is a part of the campus training program, and like I just said, it is being recorded. I just wanted to quickly go over some technical tips with you. If you have any questions during the webinar, please call SPRC at 617-618-2380. If you're having issues with Adobe Connect, this webinar platform that we are using, you can call them at 1-800-422-3623. All of the phone lines will remain muted during the webinar. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please chat them into the text box you see on the left-hand side of your screen. We will be monitoring the chat throughout the webinar and will answer your questions. We will also have time for questions at the end of the webinar. Lastly, if you would like to make your presentation screen larger, you can click on the full screen button on the upper right-hand side of your screen. Click it again to return to normal view. Now, let's get started. So welcome to all of you who are joining us from across the country. My name is Smita Varia, and I'm a prevention specialist here at SPRC. Today, I'm joined also by Sheila Krishnan, a campus prevention specialist here at SPRC. Today's webinar is part of a training program that SPRC has designed for the new cohort of campus grantees. With readings, webinars, and exercises, we hope to give you some of the knowledge and tools you'll need to start your project off on the right track. Today's event will address strategic planning, logic, and SMART objectives. I'm now going to pass it over to Sheila, who will get us started.
Great. Thanks, Misa. Sorry, I'm a little hoarse today, just getting over a cold, but I'll try to speak up. Please let us know if you have any trouble hearing us. So I wanted to start off by just, some of you may be thinking, why are we talking about strategic planning now? Many of you have already created objectives that have been written in your proposal and that's been accepted. And right now you might be focused more on how are you going to implement everything you've outlined that you'll be doing as a part of the grant. So one of the first things I just wanted to mention is that maybe most obviously, the proposal was written over a year and a half ago, and some of you may have been integrally involved in the writing of it, while others of you are new to your roles and working with a proposal that maybe you've inherited from somebody else. So even if you were involved in writing the proposal, it's important to be familiar with the goals and objectives you've outlined, and also take into consideration how things might have changed over time. I think many of you have had the great experience of having your campus move ahead in their suicide prevention work even before this grant was awarded to you, and that might affect how you view what you originally planned to do. Second, a lot of you are in the process of hiring new staff now that your proposal is funded or still are waiting for some new staff to get on board. So it's important for the new staff to connect with what your goals and objectives of the proposal are. And finally, connecting with your goals and objectives will ensure that you have a clear understanding of what they are and can be really helpful in developing any plans that you have to do a local evaluation of your efforts in order to make improvements in your program. It's hard to know if you've achieved success at the end of your grant if you're not clear about what you're setting out to do from the start. And so in mentioning local evaluation, I just want to give a quick plug for an email that you should be receiving shortly in regards to an affinity group that SPRC will be supporting for any evaluators or program staff who will be working on your evaluation efforts. So we welcome people of all levels of experience with evaluation to join, and the email will detail a little bit more about the structure and goals of this group. So just wanted to mention to keep an eye out for that. Lastly, I wanted to mention that today's session isn't meant to encourage you to change your objectives. That would definitely be a last resort and something that you need to talk through carefully with your government project officer, Roz, or Portland, or Jen. And instead, we're just hoping to give you some tools today to help clarify your objectives for yourself and your staff and your evaluators, and so that you can really accomplish what you envisioned when you first wrote the proposal. And so today I'm going to start off by taking a look at the strategic planning model. I think some of you may already be really familiar with these concepts, and in that case, we hope that you will contribute your experience by using the chat. And if any of you are pretty new to this content, please feel free to ask questions as we go along. So a lot of you may have seen this if you have taken a look at the Campus Mental Health Action Planning Guide that was developed by SPRC and the JED Foundation, or the archive webinars that you can find on their website that we've mentioned in the training program. So, and I think it's likely that many of you have seen models similar to this and are familiar with some of these concepts. In this case, we do hope we will be taking some moments to get your input and have time for questions at the end. So the strategic planning model really serves the purpose of identifying essential processes that campuses should use to get the results they set out to achieve. It's often tempting to begin the middle of the process by implementing trainings or developing communications materials or replicating programs or policies that have been tried at other campuses without truly assessing whether they are the best fit for your specific campus context. It's very clear that the most effective programs are based on a clear understanding of the problems on your campus and its specific context, which can be informed through the use of local data, the available research on campus mental health issues, and sound behavior change theory. A strong strategic planning process in developing your suicide prevention efforts will also help in thinking about and planning for sustainability from the beginning of your grant and institutionalizing suicide prevention by getting everyone to see that they have a role in suicide prevention on campus. Having clarity in your goals and objectives and a detailed problem description will help you to answer the question, how will you know when and how change has taken place? So today we're going to focus on the two steps of this model, describing the problem and its context, and identifying priority problems and setting long-range goals. So how do you develop a strong description of your problem, and why is this important? The campuses present today and in your cohort represent an incredibly diverse range of settings, students, structures, and programs. It sounds like one of the reasons many of you like working on a campus is the diversity that you get to experience. So the ability to describe problems in detail helps you focus and identify what goals to pursue and make sure that your interventions address the needs specific to your campus. It helps you identify what resources or support you need and creates a shared understanding amongst key stakeholders on campus. A statement that describes what is happening, why is it happening, and who is affected. It's also important in developing a thorough understanding of these problems and realizing that it's more than just individual characteristics that affect suicide, and it goes beyond individual treatment. So there's multiple levels where suicide factors can play a role. And so how do we find out what the problems are on your campus at each of the various levels? So I think last week, Carrie introduced the social, or a few weeks ago, Carrie introduced the social ecological model to you, and so to help visualize how some of these factors can take place. What items can you use to inform your problem description? The first one we have here on the slide is about collecting and examining sources of data. Many of you already participate in large national surveys, maybe the Healthy Mind Study or the National College Health Assessment administered by the American College Health Association. It's useful to use national data to see overarching trends, but it's also important to see what information reflects the specific situation on your campus. A lot of campuses use data from national screening days on depression or alcohol use, data collected by campus safety or police, and then data collected by the offices of judicial life and the counseling center. Some of the data that's useful to use is data about students who report being depressed and those who are actually seeking treatment, or data about perceptions of if students feel their problems are serious enough to need treatment. Qualitative information like focus groups or key informant interviews, and thinking about what data will motivate your stakeholders on campus. So what data would stakeholders need? Maybe they want data about overall student success or academic success or retention. And thinking about who the populations are that are missing in this data and why is that and how can you reach them. Given the diverse settings and structures and programs that occur on campus, it's important to make sure that your programs are tailored for your specific needs. So I'm curious to know, so here are a few other ways that you can collect data on your campus. So assess existing resources, which we'll talk about with the exercise that we had you do for this webinar, and assess the climate for campus-wide change. So here are a few other um, ways to inform your problem description on campus. So we're going to do a quick poll, and we wanted to ask to all of you, what are some sources of information that you use to describe your problem? So I mentioned a few, but if you can just go ahead and see some people typing in already. So a lot of people are participating in some of the national surveys, using state-level data. We have some people using campus-specific surveys. And so for those of you who are selecting the other category, if you could chat in to the chat box what sources you're using, we'll be curious to see that. Okay, so about 75% with some national data, counseling service annual reports, risk management data, data from the NDSD. Mary, could you just let us know what that acronym stands for? Local county data, coordinated response team data. Got it. National Depression Screening Day. Thank you. Counseling center data again, health center data, Dean of Students office data. I see some more people are typing in, so I'll just give a couple more seconds. Actual suicides that happen on campus. Focus groups with students. Great. Great, and I also I see that about 75% of you use campus-specific surveys, and so I also want to make a plug for the private pages section on the SPRC website. I think this is a question that as prevention specialists we do hear of other campuses who want to develop their own surveys, and it would be great to see examples of what some of you are using. So please feel free to share those. That's a grantee-specific area that you need the password for, so just open to other grantees. See some Greek life, National College Health Assessment. Great, thank you. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the next slide. So this may look familiar to a lot of you because we sent it out in the last week. And so this is a tool that we've used to help in assessing, that we've given you to use to help in assessing your existing resources that was created by the JED Foundation, part of the Campus Map webinar series. A few weeks ago on the webinar, Karen Adam introduced you to the JED Foundation and SPRC comprehensive approach to suicide prevention that was built upon the population-based model used by the U.S. Air Force. This exercise was intended to have each of you look at your campus through the lens of a comprehensive approach and to help fill in the picture of what you currently have in place and what you hope to work on. Many of you have direct experience with what some of the needs and campuses and the gaps are on your campus just working there day in and day out, which led you to write these proposals in the first place. So as we said earlier, some things might have changed in the last year and a half since the proposals were originally written. So we hope this was helpful to you. This tool also helps you to frame your work within the social ecological model. And as we've mentioned, suicide is an incredibly complex problem with factors that occur on multiple levels, and the need to intervene at multiple levels beyond individual factors is really important. So I'm not going to go over each of these areas since they've been covered in some detail, but I wanted to focus on two components that emerged as areas some of you mentioned feeling less familiar with in our previous webinar. So that was, the first one was increasing help-seeking behavior. And so we had talked a little bit about some of the barriers that some of you mentioned in help-seeking behavior on your campus, and I think stigma emerged, lack of awareness of services, maybe specific cultural beliefs. But I'd like to hear from you what some of the items that you have in development or being implemented under the help-seeking behavior category are. So please go ahead and use the chat box again, and I'll read off some of your examples. I see a lot of people are typing. That's great. Okay, the Student Support Network, the Are You OK social media campaign, providing culturally sensitive materials, highlighting campus resources, messaging to at-risk groups of students regarding services and encouraging utilization, educational workshops and wellness lectures, Active Minds chapters, outreach to classes, see another Active Minds, health promotion in the Student Health Services Department. Okay, so these are some of the things that you guys mentioned developing or being implementing. Thank you so much for all of these great responses. So neat to see what everybody's working on. Peer health educators, increasing suicide awareness among primary care medical providers. Great, thank you. Disability Student Services Office is one of the largest providers of outreach. Doing a lot of student peer outreach, outreach to classes, chats in multiple languages, targeting student leaders in different areas, so maybe some key target groups, athletics, Greeks, or I don't know what EOF is. Working with first-year seminars, partnering with student activities, educational opportunity fund. Great, thank you. A lot of residence hall outreach. Wonderful, thanks. So the other area that some of you mentioned feeling less familiar with on the last webinar was the component on developing life skills. So I'm also curious to hear what some of you have put down that is in development or being implemented under this category. First-year college transition programs, stress and anxiety management workshops, and mindfulness sessions. USA Funds program, freshman 101 classes, developing an online interactive life skills of self-assessment with personalized feedback, resiliency training programs, decision-making, financial literacy, and stress management. Great. University Career Center, Women's Center, some residence hall programming. Great. Find your focus for ADHD students. A couple people are typing in, so give another few seconds. Stairway to Success for At-Risk Freshmen, Healthy Mind Series, first-year residential experience, fit into college, transition group for freshmen, great. There's a lot of people focusing on the transition from high school to college. And so now that we have a better sense of some of the items each of you are working on, how do we turn these gaps in areas of need into goals and objectives that are clear and concise? I'm going to hand it over to Smitha now, who will talk a little bit about how to develop SMART objectives.
Thanks, Sheila. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about, a little bit more in detail about what SMART objectives are and how you can take a look at your current objectives and see if they have all the components of being SMART. Achievable, realistic, and time-specific. In thinking about writing SMART objectives or reframing your already written objectives so that they do meet these criteria, there are a few ways to do that. First, you want to make sure that your objectives are specific. Objectives that are specific should answer the who or what of your program's activities. We also suggest using only one action verb since objectives with more than one verb imply that more than one activity or behavior is being measured. You also want to try and avoid verbs that may have vague meanings to describe your intended outcomes since it may prove difficult to measure them. Instead, use verbs that document action. For example, instead of saying that something is going to increase understanding, you could say, at the end of this activity, the students will list these three things, whatever they may be. And remember, the greater the specificity, the greater the measurability, which, of course, is great for evaluation. Next, you want to make sure that your objectives are measurable. The focus here is on how much change is expected. Objectives should quantify the amount of change expected. It's impossible to determine whether objectives have been met unless they can be measured. The objective provides a reference point from which a change in the target population can be clearly measured. And this is key here in order to be able to get clear for yourself when breaking down the activities and looking at your logic model and thinking about the different steps and always keeping an eye on evaluation and how you can measure your own success. The A stands for achievable. Objectives should be attainable within a given time frame and with available program resources. This one seems like a no-brainer. Of course, you want your objectives to be achievable. However, oftentimes this is easier said than done. The R stands for realistic. Objectives are most useful when they accurately address the scope of the problem and programmatic steps that can be implemented within a specific time frame. This is closely tied to the objectives of being achievable and something you really feel you can accomplish during the life of your project. And lastly, the objective should be time specific. Objectives should provide a time frame indicating when the objective will be measured or a time by which the objective will be met. And this, again, really helps in planning and evaluating the program. So now we're going to look at some examples of objectives, and you will all be able to pick which components of the SMART objectives they are. And of course, when we show you the poll, you can pick multiple answers. So the first poll question, just look at the first one, is creating a brochure to increase awareness of mental health services available to students on campus. So I'd like you all to pick which part of the SMART objectives you think it is. Is it specific? Is it measurable? Is it achievable? Is it realistic? And is it time specific? You can answer multiple parts of the objective. So I can see here that many of you are picking that it is specific. And yes, this is specific because the who is being answered because there are the students. And the what is creating a brochure. A few of you have chosen measurable. And if you track how it is measurable, if you track how it increases awareness. You would need to collect the number of brochures that were distributed, and did the students get mental health services because they saw this brochure. So this part could probably be tweaked a little bit. A, is it achievable during the grant? And it seems like it can be. If you create the brochure and distribute it, then it is achievable. I see a lot of you have picked realistic. And yes, it does fit under being realistic because it addresses the problem. This objective can increase help-seeking behavior if the students do go to get mental health services. And I am glad that none of you have picked time specific because there is no time given in this objective. You could make it time framed by just adding during the first year, during the first 6 months. Um, and so right now it's not time specific, but by just adding a simple phrase of some sort of time frame, you can make it time specific. So now we're going to move to the second objective. Um, and we picked this objective because it may lean itself towards developing life skills, where Sheila did say that that's one of the areas that you all want to get more information on. So the objective is developing educational seminars around time management and conflict resolution for first-year students. So again, you can answer um, the question with multiple parts of the SMART objective. And I see some of you are already filling it out. And I can see a lot of you have chosen that it is specific. And yes, because it, again, it identifies the who are the first-year students, and what they are creating is educational seminars. A couple of you are picking measurable. Um, but is this measurable? How would you quantify the amount of change expected? So that's one of the questions you want to answer. And yes, again, it does look like it is achievable if you develop the educational seminars and and give them to the first-year students. And again, yes, it is realistic. It is addressing a problem, the problem being time management and conflict resolution for first-year students, and time specific. So again, there's not really a time frame given for this objective, but you could make it time framed again by adding during the first year. It does specify that the seminar are for first year students. However, it doesn't necessarily give the information as to when you would want to accomplish this by. So I wanted to thank you all for your participation in regards to SMART objectives, and hoping that these exercises gave you a little bit more information about looking at your objectives and making sure that they do address being specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-specific. So now I'm going to pass it over to Sheila again, and she's going to um, take us through thinking through your logic. Sheila?
Great. Thanks, Misa, and thanks everybody for giving your input there on that exercise. So I think we can see that these are objectives that need a little bit of work in making them maybe more time specific, maybe more realistic or achievable. So we're going to revisit some of these examples shortly and pick them apart in another way by talking about how our activities lead us to the change that we want to see. We're going to talk about the idea behind the logic model, which is really quite simple, but I'm not going to go too far into depth about logic models today. I know many of you have a logic model in your proposal or have seen fairly complex logic models created before. If this is something that you have more questions about or want some assistance on, please mention it to your prevention specialist and they can help you further with this. So a logic model is just another tool to help make sure that you've thought through your program and that your process logically makes sense. In other words, you want to make sure the activities and resources you're putting into your program will lead to the outcomes that you're hoping for. The inputs, activities, and outputs should link to the overall program goal that you want to see. For all of us here today, the long-range outcomes would be decreasing the risk factors and increasing the protective factors to reduce suicide. So one way to think through some of the assumptions that are often in your goals and objectives is using some if and then connections. So I'm going to pull up some examples now. Um, and so we're going to revisit this example about creating a brochure to increase awareness of mental health services for students. So I'd like to ask you to think through some of these examples and let's talk about what some of the assumptions are. So if we create a brochure to increase awareness of mental health services for students, they will be more likely to seek help. What are some of the missing links between providing brochures and people getting help that are in this objective, this goal? Where are they going for help? Access to the brochures. Mhm. Exactly. So students actually have to read the brochure and they need to know whether they actually need help. What is in the brochure that would make it more likely to seek help? How do they get the brochure? Will they read it? What is the connection between a brochure and help seeking? Thanks, Vicki. How to distribute the brochure? Even if they know about the resources, will they seek them out? So what are some of the other barriers that might be inhibiting help seeking? I think we had talked about that a bit on the last webinar. Who gets the brochure? Do they identify themselves as needing help? How one will know that the students using the brochures are the ones seeking help. Great. Language barriers, not accessible to all. Stigma. A few more people typing, so I'm just gonna. Is there a phone number to call or a website to visit? Will they go visit it after they see it in the brochure? The students are less likely to pick up something paper, so maybe there's different channels that we need to think about in reaching students. Exactly. Awareness does not mean that they will seek help. So one of the things that a logic model will help you do is to kind of assess what are some of these assumptions, and you guys have really come up with some great ones in this example. I think often we think, if we create a material that we want to increase this behavior. There's all these other things that need to be addressed as well. Having events on campus. So if we distribute brochures or any other type of material, we're hoping that people will pick them up and actually read them. And we're hoping that they will gain some knowledge and or maybe change in their attitudes or beliefs about getting services for mental health, and that they will actually follow through with the action of getting help for themselves or for somebody else. So I'm going to go on to the next example. So if we develop educational seminars around time management and conflict resolution for first-year students, they will be able to cope better. So what are some of the assumptions? What's missing here? How will we know that they are better at coping? Exactly. So I think this relates back to, is this a measurable goal? Assuming that they will actually attend a public meeting, do they have an opportunity to practice the skills that they are learning in the seminar? That they will attend, pay attention, and put the skills to use. I think a lot of campuses, struggle with how to get people to attend the events that they hold. Getting them to attend yet another class. That the information they're receiving translates to action. So the seminar needs to be helpful and practical, and it needs to be implemented for students to attend, and students need to attend. I think these are really great questions. So do all first-year students attend the seminars, or is it just certain populations? Exactly. So I think in making this goal a bit more specific, defining what populations you're trying to reach or where you're going to hold the seminars, that knowledge equates behavior change. Exactly. It's not always the case. That time management and conflict resolution are the only or most prominent factors in not being able to cope. I think that's a great point. I think this kind of gets back to why it's important to know what exactly is the context on your campus. Are there other life skills that people are having issues with? Is it stress? Is it, physical health or sleep or some of these other things that really help in developing life skills? Didactic or experiential approaches to seminars may affect action. Too busy, so other competing interests. And there are a lot more factors that go into coping more effectively. On a commuter campus where many students are in and out, how do you convince them to stay? That brings up a really great point. So it's one thing when someone's on a residential campus, or you can do some outreach through residential halls, but when people are coming in and leaving, thank you. So I'm going to bring up one more example that we can pick apart a little bit that might be familiar to a lot of you. So if we train faculty as gatekeepers, at-risk students will get the help they need. What are some of the assumptions here that we're missing? Staff also play an important role. Exactly, that students will turn to faculty if they're in crisis. That's a great one. Is it faculty that students are turning to? Will faculty approach students? How do we know that faculty are actually taking action? Great, thank you all so much. It's so great to see so many people chiming in. Thanks. Will students trust faculty? How do we know that faculty are actually taking action? That faculty are comfortable with this role? I think people have mentioned that faculty often don't see themselves as this falling into one of their responsibilities. Anyone can be a gatekeeper. Faculty are invested and interested in being gatekeepers. We're assuming that. Great, I like that. So we're making the assumption that anyone can be a gatekeeper. So is there another way that we need to assess who we should be training in gatekeeper trainings? Do the faculty know how to respond and to bridge to counseling services? Students don't want to be judged by faculty. So I think, again, we've seen a couple people bring up, are faculty really the people that students are going to talk to or reach out to? Students seek out other students more often than faculty. So combining this with student training, at-risk training. How are at-risk students defined on a particular campus? How long will students have to wait to receive help? Good point, thank you. Faculty may not be willing to take on this role, although they are encouraged to do so. There's a certain degree of resistance, but more training seems to help with this. So understanding that different faculty members may have different motivations and have a different level of comfort in whether they want to engage with students in this way, if the training is something that they're interested in. And even if they do take the training, how do we know that they're applying those skills? How do we know that we've made changes in their comfort, their confidence level, their self-efficacy? I see a few more people are typing, so I want to just go ahead and give everyone a chance. This is really great. I think it's always helpful to see what other of your peer grantees are thinking about or understanding too. It's hard to get buy-in from faculty. They want to come in and teach their content. They want us to take care of the counseling stuff. At-risk students would need to be attending class. These are really great. Thanks so much. FERPA, so some liability issues, some concerns about liability. We hear that a lot. So I wanted, these are just a few ways that Smitha and I wanted to cover today to get you to think about your goals and objectives in a really meaningful way. And again, realizing that having really clear goals and objectives and describing your problem um, in a way that's detailed will really help you to also develop an evaluation and make improvements and assess what interventions and what strategies make the most sense for your specific campus. So it's worth revisiting your objectives, really getting to know them, and thinking through some of these assumptions and how to make them more smart. So I've left a bit of time for questions, so I just want to go ahead and open it up to anyone that's had questions come through about some of these specific examples. If you have reflections on the JED Foundation exercise that we had provided, and if any of you have experience in what strategic planning has been like as a process on your campus, we just want to give you an opportunity to share here or ask questions, and just use the chat box to do that.
Thanks, Sheila. And we do have a question about the SMART goals under measurable. And we had a question about creating a brochure. Was that a yes or no in terms of being measurable? And I just want to say that, you know, it could be a type of measurability in terms of how many brochures are made. However, more so, measurability is more about how much change is expected. And so if you have any more questions about that or any of the other SMART objectives, you can definitely ask them here. And then if you want a little bit more detail about a specific aspect, you can always talk to your prevention specialist about it. And we had another question about whether this webinar will be posted to the SPRC site, and yes, it will be. We are recording this webinar, and the recording along with the presentation will be posted to the SPRC website, and you'll be getting that link either later today or this week.
And so Franca had a question about those who have transition groups. How do you get students to attend? So I'm curious to hear what others think of, what other successes or challenges that others who do some of the transition programs have experienced on campus. So requiring first-year students to attend outreach groups on time management, getting students involved and inviting other students. I know quite a few people had mentioned that they do seminars for freshmen and helping with the transition, and I think a couple people had mentioned implementing those in maybe already existing classes. Doing a creative job with advertising the group so that students know what it's about and what to expect. Great point. Extra credit, great. So I'm wondering what other questions people have had as we've been going through this webinar today.
We've gone through a lot of information today, thinking about strategic planning, SMART goals, and thinking about your logic, and wanted to really thank you all for your participation in in all of the different activities we've had during this webinar. It's really great to know what you all are already using, what your existing resources are, so we really thank you for that. And we also had another suggestion that food helps and get them there as always, and that usually good attendance happens when there's snacks.
And this is also an area that feel free to bring up with your prevention specialist, and maybe they can help, you know, talk through some strategies about thinking about what's the best fit for a program like this, and maybe what are some of the challenges you're experiencing and everything like that. Okay, so I'm not seeing too many people typing in with more questions. I'm just going to go ahead and some of the next steps that you're going to have coming up. We are going to be focusing on crisis protocols next, and so Carrie has been sending out the reminders on Mondays. We'll be sending you an exercise about crisis protocol planning. We hope that all of you have gotten the information about the webinar coming up on October 25th about developing crisis protocols. And I also wanted to mention that to expect an email coming early next week about an evaluation of the training program so far. So the webinars and the exercises that we've been asking you to do, we would love to get your feedback on how helpful they've been for you, and any feedback or input for you know, things we can work on as we continue throughout the training program. And then Michelle, I see you had another question about finding ideas and developing life skills. So I think a couple of the resources on the website, and I'll let your prevention specialist also get in touch with you about that. So I'm just going to finish a little early today. I know everybody is busy and anxious to get back to work. So thanks so much for joining. Thank you for your input and participation, and we will hope to talk to you soon.
The meeting is